Korang ingat tak, awal tahun 2024 dulu, tim NoEqual pernah buat satu shoot RTT4 GTR versus Honda FL5. So ada something yang interesting berlaku pada malam itu. Korang nak tahu? Stay tune. Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera dan selamat kembali ke NoEqual channel. Hari ini kita berada di KKB untuk buat video dan review FL5 yang ada di belakang aku ni. So, back to the story. Kalau korang ingat, pada awal tahun 2024 tu, tim NoEqual pernah shoot sebiji RTT4 GTR against sebiji FL5. So, apa yang berlaku pada shoot malam tu, kita orang tak cukup driver. So, kita orang ada 3 orang. Obviously, seorang nak shoot foto, seorang nak shoot video, seorang nak drive camera car. Tapi kita ada 2 subjek car, RTT4 GTR dengan FL5. So, we have no choice but to call our reserve driver, which is Zakaria Dahlan, aka Zak. RTT4 GTR ni memang adalah salah satu kereta idaman semua jejaka kat Malaysia ni lah basically. Termasuk Zak juga. So, kita minta tolong dia so that dia pun boleh merasa drive kereta idaman dia. So, the interesting thing is, after the shoot, I guess the FL5 is so good, Zak went and bought one for himself. So, inilah kereta Zak. Sejujurnya, aku bukanlah orang yang layak untuk review FL5 ni. So, let's jump in with Zak.
So, hi guys, I'm Zak and I am the NoEqual reserve driver, and this is my Honda Civic Type R FL5. So, macam masa Zahid call tu, of course nak pergilah shoot tu, and I wanted to try to drive the car because I have driven every single other Type R model lah prior to that. So we went for the shoot and I brought my wife along with me. So masa tu we were already looking for another car to replace my previous car, and we were torn between a few models. So FL5 was one of them. We also had the F80 M3, we had the 340i in the list. We were thinking of a GR86 at one point, but when we got the call, we decided, okay, let's go, because bila lagi nak test drive FL5 sangat lah kan. So we went, and as soon as we got in the car, I looked at her and she looked at me, and we were both just like, yeah, okay, I think this is the one. And it was kind of sold, and throughout the night, as the more we drove it, the more we realized like this is the one that we wanted to go to. It was a lot more comfortable than my previous cars and whatnot. So yeah, so I feel like the FL5 has matured a lot compared to the FK8. It's not as sharp. It doesn't have all the vents and like the piston fairings at the rear. It doesn't look too much of a race car. I like that it's a lot more mature now. It's also a lot wider. You can fit more tire into it already from factory. So I also like that it dropped down to 19s from 20s, which was on the FK8. So to me, like being a more mature car and having these sleeker body lines, I really like that because it wasn't so in your face like the FK8 was. I didn't like how the FK8 was really screaming for attention. I like how the FL5 is a lot more subtle. So that was another pretty big selling point for me. I like how the design has grown from the last gen. So if we're going to talk about power, the FL and the FK don't feel too far apart, because you gain a little bit of power with the FL, but you also gain a bit of weight. So I don't feel like those two are far apart. However, with the FD, of course, you've got a lot more power. But after owning the car, after properly driving it, I started to realize that it's actually a very large scale FD2 in the sense that the ratios are actually pretty long, but it still feels, even though you're pulling to 7,000 RPM, it feels like you're going for 9 because it's quite slow to go up the rev range on the higher gears, just like how the FD was. But the FK was more or less the same also. Both cars can hit pretty high speed. So it feels like you're driving an FD2, but you need to always look at the speedometer, because if you get in over your head, you'd probably be entering the corner a bit too quick. So NA versus turbo VTEC, I feel like I obviously miss NA. There is obviously going to be a bit of turbo lag that no matter how they play with it, it's hard to really go past it. You will have that turbo lag in these cars. The FD was just really responsive, and it was super rev happy. This car is not really like that at all, but in 2024, with how times have changed and emissions and whatnot, I understand that this is how cars are meant to be built. So you just gotta accept it. And this is the fair trade-off. This is the nice middle ground for it, I feel. Between NA and turbo, this is, you still feel like you got the result. It feels like you're driving an NA sometimes, but it is turbo and it is hot, and there are some things that you just can't beat. Like, I do miss properly beating up my FD on Sepang for as many laps as I could before the tyres gave up, because the engine temps and the water temps would never really rise up critical. But with the FL, it's not even a one lap car, if you ask me. It's barely a one lap car, and then you just gotta pit and wait until it cools down before you can go out again. I feel like the FL in the handling department, it feels pretty close to an FD. It feels like driving an FD with a turbo and 265 tires. The way whatever input you give, the way it gives you your feedback is very similar to how the FD is. So you enter the corner and you will feel like in the rear you'll feel the body weigh on the suspension weigh on the tires, and then it'll start to rotate. You feel that with the FL, whereas the FK, when I was driving it, it felt pretty numb in that sense, and I feel like you have a lot more roll in the FK as compared to the FL. The FL feels a lot stiffer, a lot more direct, which suits how I like to drive my cars. So that was another major selling point. It just felt like driving a large-scale FD, to be honest. It was a very good replacement for the FD. In terms of comfort, the FL is really nice, but it is like, you do get the over-glorified Civic vibes. However, material choice and whatnot, I'm pretty sure it is slightly better than like a locally assembled Civic, but I like that everything is pretty close to the driver, and it does feel pretty wide with this new dashboard design. Everything is pretty simple, but it's also really nice and classy. Whereas like the FK had a little bit too much going on for me inside, especially with how the meter was. It was like that, it had that split screen meter thing, and the FD was also like 2-tier meter, which I didn't really like too much, to be honest. The practicality of the car is amazing. It's a lot more practical than my FD. However, I feel against an FK, they are pretty similar in that sense. But so far, whenever my wife and I go shopping, or whenever we go out to buy stuff for our baby or for our house, I haven't hit a point where I haven't been able to fit everything in the car. It always somehow manages to fit, and it's crazy how it does that. And in terms of comfort too, I can put my in-laws in the back and we can go for road trips, and it's really comfortable and everybody can fall asleep, and it's great. It's great. I honestly love it in terms of practicality and comfort. It works really well as a daily driver, and you can really go on the road trips. You can go to track. You can do anything you want with it. It's great, honestly. I feel like in the modern day, with how everything has gone up in price, it's just something that you have to suck up. It is quite painful paying this kind of money for a Honda at the end of the day. However, if you like the car and you like the brand and you like everything that it brings, I think it's justifiable. But it really depends on the buyer if that's what they really want. If you're just buying it because your friends have it or because your friends are telling you to, but you don't appreciate it and it doesn't have that pull towards you, then maybe you're gonna feel like you spent a bit too much money on this car. However, like compared to an FD2R, I feel like those cars they went up in price again and then now they've kind of dropped back down. But I think an FD as a play toy, it's great, even for that amount of money. However, if you want to make it an all-rounder car, I think this is the better option for you. So now that Honda has announced the 80,000 rebate on the FL, to be honest, I feel a bit indifferent. What I wanted was the JDM spec. So I'm happy with what I've got, and regardless, I've already got the car, so it's a bit too late to turn back. But is it a good time to buy? Yeah, it's a good time to buy. It's a lot more worth it now, because I honestly felt like for 400k the car wasn't really that worth it. Also why I ended up going for a Recon unit, because that was cheaper to acquire. If you want to talk about the specs between the cars, for example, the JDM gets you the privacy glass, the Malaysian specs don't. You also lose out on blind spot assist in the Malaysian cars. And however, with the JDM cars, you'd have to look for an option if you want to get the in-car charger, because that doesn't come stock in the Japanese cars. However, they do come from factory with the Malaysian cars. Then there's also a lot of little accessories here and there that you could get with a Japanese spec that you probably wouldn't get with a Malaysian spec. But yeah, that's about it. And also, if you take a JDM model, your radio is going to be in Japanese. Everything in your head unit is going to be in Japanese. Everything on the meter is Japanese. However, if you take the Malaysian spec, then you would get it in English. And that's probably one of the biggest drawbacks I see between the local spec and the Japanese spec. But if you don't mind a Japanese unit, then that's okay. So for anyone who's thinking of getting a practical 2-litre turbo that can daily drive and also take up the twisties and sepang and whatnot, this would probably be the right time for you to get an FL5. Now, if you'd excuse me, I'd like to enjoy the rest of this road driving my car.